It's incredible to see everybody here today. Thank you for understanding our switch from the Union over here to the Wang Center. So for all of you here who don't know who I am, I'm Anil Prasad, and I'm our Student Affairs Co-Chair for our Earthstock celebration. I would first like to give a round of applause for our Earthstock committee and also our campus partners for curating an incredible and engaging series of our programs for the week. So thank you so much. So I hope that everybody had a chance to engage with our undergraduate student projects outside. All the research that we have here is at the heart of Stony Brook University's mission. And our students also continue to push our boundaries of what is possible. So we have many programs this year, from a few nighttime walks in the Clara Woods all the way to an AI and sustainability panel. So this Friday, April 24th, we have our annual Earthstock Festival from 12 until 3 p.m. With over 90 exhibitors, presentations, student organizations, live music, and also our highly anticipated duck race. Now, I would like to turn it over to our academic co-chair for Earthstock. So please help me in welcoming our faculty director of the School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, Dr. Tara Ryder.
Thank you, and I did just get a bump-in title there. So it is my great honor to be able to introduce Dr. Patricia Wright, who is our keynote speaker for this year's Earthstock. Dr. Wright is a scientist and distinguished professor in the Department of Anthropology here at Stony Brook, and she has received the prestigious MacArthur Fellowship Genius Award and 4 medals of honor from the Malagasy government. In 2014, she was the first woman to win the Indianapolis Prize for Animal Conservation, which is the Nobel Prize equivalent in the field of conservation. Dr. Wright is also the founder and executive director of Stony Brook University's Institute for the Conservation of Tropical Environments, and is the founder and executive director of the Center of ValBio, a research and training center in Ranumafana, Madagascar. In 1986, after discovering a new species of lemur, she helped establish its habitat as a national park and as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And she continues to lead research expeditions to remote places in Madagascar, making valuable contributions to science. Dr. Wright has published over 200 scientific papers, authored 4 books, and has given hundreds of lectures to museums, universities, and societies throughout the US and Europe, and we're very excited that she'll be giving one tonight. Her research and accomplishments have been featured in several films, including the award-winning documentary IMAX Warner Brothers film Island of Lemurs, Madagascar, that was narrated by Morgan Freeman. And more recently, she was also involved in the Yves Boro, The Lost Forest, which premiered in France in the fall of 2014. Now tonight, Dr. Wright's talk is titled Resilience in a Changing World. Madagascar, an island nation rich in biodiversity and cultural heritage, stands as a powerful example of resilience in a changing world. Facing challenges such as climate change, deforestation, and economic pressure, the country continues to adapt through community-driven conservation, sustainable agriculture, and innovative development strategies. But as conditions reach the tipping point, can Madagascar and its lemurs persevere? Dr. Wright will outline her journey from discovering new species of lemurs, establishing a national park, and going into the deep fossil history in Madagascar to where we are today. Can this island country on the brink of extinction survive? We are not far behind. Can we? So, Dr. Patricia Wright.
Wow, it's wonderful to be here on this beginning of Earthstock. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the incredible leadership from funders and partners, including Robin and Jim Herrnstein, who just spearheaded our CVB Madagascar endowment, and also the Andrew Sabin Family Foundation. Recent support from ASFF has allowed us to confirm a brand new species of tree frog just 2 weeks ago. And in the audience this afternoon, we have 3 visitors from Madagascar, 2 of them for their first time to visit outside the United States and to visit Stony Brook. So welcome, Haja and Patrick and Dina, and thank you for coming here today. And of course, I am grateful for the support of Stony Brook University. I'm tremendously thankful to Andrea Goldsmith, our newly inaugurated president, and Provost Carl Lejwe, who has put his heart into making our Madagascar project strong into the future. This support will ensure the continuation of our work that we have accomplished for the last 3 decades. And now I'm going to change for a minute to tell you about a dream. I dreamed last night that Noah's Ark docked at Port Jefferson Harbor, and a representative, I think his name was Noah, yes, it was Noah himself, who walked off onto the dock and asked for refuge for his cargo. He had almost 10 million species on board, and he wanted refuge for them. It was a dream, so I couldn't quite understand what he meant, because we know Long Island is small and doesn't have room for an additional 10 million species. 2 by 2, I guess that's 20 million individuals. Now, there's no room. But Noah was adamant, then sobbing that he didn't have space on the ark anymore. And then I realized that the ark was the earth, and the animals on board was the biodiversity that was going extinct, and we were being asked to help out and give them refuge to save them, all of the animals in the world. And then my alarm went off, and I woke up, and I sat there in that semi-fog of first morning, wondering what had happened. Were the animals given refuge? Were they saved? Or did they go extinct? Extinct. Extinct. What does that mean? Visions of the passenger pigeon, the dodo, the giant lemurs. Extinction is forever. We know that. But is it too late? 100 years ago, there were oysters in New York Harbor, but they didn't go extinct. Alongside extinct, just before extinction, is resilience. Resilience means getting to the brink of extinction, digging in your heels, and with a burst of stubbornness and hope, maybe some technology, coming back. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with hope and thought back in history. Rachel Carson. How many of you know who Rachel Carson was? She wrote a book in 1962 called Silent Spring. She was a marine biologist. I don't think SOMAS, our marine school, was quite born yet, but she could have easily taught at SOMAS. In the late 50s, Rachel Carson noticed that the bald eagles were disappearing and the ospreys were getting rarer, and she knew why. There was a pesticide called DDT. The farmers were spraying all over our fields, and when these raptors ate their prey in those fields, those very pesticides, those poisons made to help the farmers, were killing the birds. They were causing the eggshells to thin out, break open, and the eggs of those birds of prey weren't able to hatch. If 100% of your young don't survive, your species is headed for extinction. And they came very close to extinction. For 3 decades, we here on the East Coast rarely saw ospreys, and I never saw a bald eagle. The very symbol of our country was heading for extinction. When Rachel Carson wrote that book, Silent Spring, she made the connection linking pollution, pesticides, and public health. She sold 500,000 copies in 24 countries, and DDT was banned. And now we see lots of bald eagles and ospreys flying over Long Island again. We see the proof of resilience every day, or mostly every day. But back in the 60s, banning DDT was just the beginning, because there were other problems, big problems. Some of us remember the 60s. I think of the magnificent Cadillacs and Chevrolets spewing huge amounts of leaded gas out the tailpipe and fast cars going very fast. At that time, factories were belching out smoke and sludge 24 hours a day. Los Angeles was perpetually engulfed in a yellow fog called smog. Many large rivers were polluted with oil. When I was in middle school, I remember riding in the back seat of our 1957 Chevrolet with my brother and sister. Every Sunday, my dad drove our family past the Love Canal in Niagara Falls on the way to my uncle's house. I and my siblings coughed and sniffled and held our noses. From the back seat, we yelled, "Stinky, Stinky, drive faster, Dad." And indeed, he did. Yes, air pollution was accepted by most people as the smell of prosperity. People seemed oblivious to the fact that we were poisoning the air, the waters, the essential places for life to survive. In January 1969, 4 million tons of crude oil spilled into the sea near Santa Barbara, California, killing thousands of seabirds and unknown numbers of marine mammals, including dolphins and sea lions. Then, 5 months later, at noon, on June 22nd, 1969, the Cayuga River in Cleveland, Ohio, was so polluted with oil that it burst into flames 5 stories high. Senator Gaylord Nelson, a junior Republican senator from Wisconsin, shocked and horrified by the ravages of these oil events, went into action. The action started on college campuses. Yes, it started on college campuses like this one. Republican Senator Gaylord Nelson persuaded Pete McCloskey, a conservation-minded Republican congressman, to serve as co-chair on the committee. And Earth Day was born on April 22nd, 1970. Earth Day inspired 20 million Americans. At this time, 10% of the total population of the United States, persuaded them to take to the streets, the parks, and auditoriums to demonstrate against the impacts of 150 years of industrial development, which had left a growing legacy of serious human health impacts. Groups that had been fighting individually against oil spills, polluting factories and power plants, raw sewage, toxic dumps, pesticides, the loss of wilderness, and the extinction of wildlife, they all united on Earth Day around these shared common values. Earth Day 1970 achieved a rare political moment, enlisting support from Republicans and Democrats, rich and poor, urban dwellers and farmers, business and labor leaders. The first Earth Day led to positive action that made our lives better. Action happened. The first Earth Day led to the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Act, 1970. The National Environmental Education Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, CITES, the Endangered Species Act, Roe versus Wade. The first Earth Day led to positive action that made our lives better. Then, in the 1980s, the scientists, Tom Lovejoy, Peter Raven, Paul Ehrlich, and E.O. Wilson pointed out that rare species of plants and animals were going extinct in our southern hemisphere, that human populations were devastating huge tracts of rainforest, and they labeled it the biodiversity crisis. We were losing species faster than we could discover them. Those scientists convinced Congress to put aside funds to help reverse the loss of species. Now, in those years, I was finishing my doctoral dissertation research, studying the ecology, of the night monkeys in the Amazon. The Amazon was vast, and the ecosystems were intact. After graduate school, I accepted a postdoc at Duke University in North Carolina. I studied tarsiers in Borneo and returned with intentions to study their behavior in captivity at Duke. But when Dr. Alwyn Simons brought me into his office and said, "Do you want to go to Madagascar and find a species that we think, everyone thinks, is extinct?" I said yes, not knowing that my life was about to change forever. When I first flew over Madagascar, I burst into tears. Madagascar is big. If you placed it next to the U.S. East Coast, it could stretch from Maine to Florida. It was once covered with forests, but what I saw was a country cleared of trees. 90% of the natural habitat was gone. In fact, Madagascar looked like a moonscape when I first saw it from the air. Vast, denuded landscape, rivers running red like blood, erosion of red clay. No paved roads, no cars, no goods. My graduate students and I landed and searched for months to find forest but eventually we did. The forest was called Radamafan, and it was a pristine rainforest, as tall and undisturbed as any I had ever seen in the Amazon. Huge trees, sparkling waterfalls. But this forest, unlike the Amazon, this forest had lemurs. Lots of species. Beautiful place. Lots of species and birds and chameleons and frogs. I had reached paradise. It was magical. Radamafan Forest was very productive for us scientists. We found a new species of lemur. This is the golden bamboo lemur, a deep orange color and eating only bamboo, a kind of primate panda. And then we discovered another lemur species, bigger than the new one, that was abundant in the fossil deposits, but we thought had gone extinct. Excited to find out more about how these two species could coexist, I concentrated on my research of studying these bamboo lemurs in that rainforest. And then the timber exploiters arrived. Droves of local people armed with axes chopping down the biggest tree. And as each giant tree fell, it would topple 8, 9, 10 trees in its path. And there were hundreds of timber exploiters. I was in despair and begged him to stop. Rather naive of me, since I was speaking bad French and they only spoke Malagasy. So I went to the capital of Madagascar, Antananarivo, to see the director of the Department of Water and Forest. Sitting across from the director in his office, I explained that there was a problem in Radamafan. And he cleared his throat and said slowly, "But those loggers, they have concessions to log precious hardwoods. I signed those concessions." But I countered, "But you didn't know about the new species of lemur. You didn't know about the rediscovered species. Things are different now. The value of the forest is different. You must stop the logging for your country. You must." He stopped and said, "Do you know where you are?" I nodded weakly. "Do you know that you're in Madagascar, one of the poorest countries in the world? We don't have money to make a protected area. We don't have money for making the boundaries, building the infrastructure, training the rangers. Madame Patricia." And he lowered his voice, and he pushed back his chair and began to get up. "But Madame Patricia, if you can find the money to make the national park, we will be very happy to help you make that park." And I just stood there, and he ushered me out. I stood in the hall alone, shaking my head. "No, I can't. I can't raise millions of dollars. That's what's going to take for this park. I was an assistant professor at Duke and had never raised more than a few $1,000s for my research. No, I can't do it. I have no experience in making a national park or anything like it. No, I can't waste my time doing things that aren't research. I'll never get tenure." And then from deep within, I knew that I couldn't let those newly discovered lemurs go extinct on my watch. Radamafan was the only place in the world where they existed. I knew that I had to protect them, save them from extinction. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. So I did it. We did it. I knew I couldn't do it alone. We started with a small team, the Department of Water and Forest, my two guides, Laure and Emile from Radamafan, and I walked around the boundaries of the forest to explain to local people about the park. We asked the local people what they used the forest for, and what would be acceptable to replace their access to the national park. They said they used it for construction wood, they used it for medicinal plants, they used it for food, they ate lemurs. It's kind of like asking an American to never go to Walmart's again, because they wouldn't be able to get any of those things. So how could we convince them to agree to that? And so they told us. They said we need health care. Health clinics are 2 days away from our village. And when we get there, there's no medicines and no doctors. We need health care. We need schools. We need schools. How can our children do anything but slash and burn agriculture if they can't read and write? And we need economic help with our rice paddies, with the storms and the cyclones. We need help with water management. And we need a soccer ball. Have you ever tried playing soccer with rolled up rags? It's not so good. And so we collected all the ideas together, and we wrote a USAID grant for $3.87 million. And in 3 years, we got it. But there was a problem, because USAID said that they didn't fund health. They didn't fund education. They could pay for help with agriculture. They could pay for the infrastructure of the park, but not those other things. Education and health were not in their mandate. But I knew that the people needed health and education. I had sort of promised them that, and I knew that we needed the communities to help protect the park. From my old social work days in Brooklyn, I knew that we couldn't do this park without community help, community buy-in, and this is what I learned to diversify funding sources. Liz Claiborne, you know, the fashion designer, and Art Ortenberg, her husband, gave me $500,000 grant that funded the health. And then the MacArthur Foundation gave me a Genius Award and an additional award to fund schools and conservation education. Contrary to the old way of making national parks, building fences, and having armed guards patrolling, I am proud to say we were one of the first conservationists to build a park with the communities supporting the idea. Our strategy has always been to save wildlife and people together. To make a long story short, on May 1991, Ranamafan was officially inaugurated, and this May, we celebrate our 35th anniversary. We are now celebrating our 125,000 acres of rainforest, ranging from 600 meters to 1,500 meters in elevation, having 15 species of lemurs living together, almost 100 species of frogs, and over 3,000 tree species, all protected. And with the help of Benjamin Andriana Mihaja and so many others, including the Madagascar National Park Service, we made that park protected. In 2007, Ranamafan National Park was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We started building a team of capable Malagasy from the communities and added graduate students and undergraduates and authorities. A movement had started in Madagascar. At the top, the World Bank, a few of us scientists and conservationists gathered in many meetings to create the world's first countrywide environmental action plan. It was a 15-year plan that took 25 years to make a reality. This environmental action plan created the first Madagascar National Park Service. Ranamafan was the 4th national park in Madagascar. Now, in 2026, there are 27 national parks located in habitats throughout the island. And many people went to work to make this happen, to make Malagasy nature work for communities and to improve the well-being of people surrounding the park. We at Central ValBio, our Stony Brook group, has 144 expert staff, local people from Madagascar. And always, we keep science at the core and build around it a cocoon, a protected area of health, education, restoration ecology, and community. Economic projects, all reinforcing that protected area. But conservation is a challenge everywhere. How can we make a real impact, an economic difference in Madagascar? In 1991, there were no ecotourists visiting Madagascar. Now there are over 250,000 each year, ecotourists eager to visit the wildlife and biodiversity and the lemurs. Tourists who brought money to pay for hotels and restaurants and handicrafts and local products. The economy started improving, and the lemurs, I am happy to report, are doing well too. With no more hunting and no more logging, the lemurs are prospering in Ranmafan National Park. And now there are about 250,000 ecotourists each year. But we need more than ecotourism. In 1995, we started to plant endemic trees in agricultural areas. Now, all of you know that throughout the project, the whole tropics, they plant trees, but they're pine and eucalyptus to use for boards and to use for things that are good for people, but not good for endemic species. So we changed that. We started growing the species that know Madagascar well. These rainforest trees not only grew, but they flowered in 10 or 15 years, much quicker than we predict. And then we realized that Madagascar's barren wasteland was more resilient than we thought. Those native tree species were, with all its ecosystem of pollinators and seed dispersers, could grow to flowering stage 3 times quicker than we had predicted. We could make those regenerated forest areas economically important to farmers by planting high-value crops. Vanilla, and we all know how expensive Malagasy vanilla is. Vanilla. And black peppercorns. We found a new species of peppers that are, absolutely the top flavor that anybody's ever found. And we can grow them on these endemic species. We tried planting on the tree trunks a newly discovered vine. That's the black peppercorns. So it's a win-win. The lemurs and the biodiversity have added habitats, and farmers have high-value cash crops. But there still are problems. The first Climate Change Congress was held in Kyoto in 1995. The Paris Agreement, a legally binding treaty, was adopted in 2015 to limit the world's increase in temperatures to below 2%. And in Montreal in 2024, the World Consortium vowed to protect 30% of the wild places by 2030. Nonetheless, the world keeps warming. It keeps warming and warming. Worldwide, the first place to be crippled by that climate change was the southwest of Madagascar. You know it's true because it was in the New York Times. There was an extreme drought, and hundreds of people are migrating. There's the ecotourism and the reforestation. But these are the people that started migrating from the south to a place where they could find water. The shortage of firewood, and the local people are chopping down endemic spiny forest and tropical dry forest to sell charcoal, to have fire for cooking rice in Madagascar. And Madagascar is a country that thrives on rice. With climate change, there are more unstoppable wildfires. In January 2025, the fires even entered Renmafan National Park. This is a park that gets 4 meters of rain a year. It's a lot of rain, but it was so dry that the fires entered the park. But we put it out. There was 1,000 people, local villagers, who gathered together to help put it out. But climate change is not only in Madagascar. There was a decade of drought in California, and that crippled farmers. And the worst drought in 100 years is happening right now in Florida. The swamps are all drying up. The American West is suffering fires, more and more intense and vicious wildfires. Many areas in the eastern USA are flooding, and in the Midwest, even last week, there were tornadoes, and hurricanes are increasing. We are here in New York, on Long Island, and are also feeling wild fluctuations in climate, and Stony Brook has become a leader in climate change, showcased on Governor's Island. We are very proud of that, but we need more. Climate change was predicted in the 1970s, but with increasing populations of humans, and now with regulations from the 1970s being weakened and sliding backwards, countries like Madagascar and Bangladesh and Fiji are feeling the effects first, but of course, we're going to be very close behind them. Today, I am speaking to kicking off Stony Brook University's Earthstock 2026. It's a whole week of festivities honoring Earth Day. This year, 2026, is a pivotal time in history. First of all, because we've lost all these laws. Second of all, because we've lost 3 conservation heroes: Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall, and Baruti Galdikas. They have all passed on. The National Geographic icons for saving our closest relatives, gorillas, chimps, and orangutans from extinction, and saving tropical forests for the future. I knew all 3 quite well, and I will miss them. The world will miss them. Each are symbols of hope and evidence that preserving nature is possible in this human-dominated planet. It was just last year on Earth Day that Jane Goodall herself said, I do believe there is a window of time when we can at least slow down climate change and the loss of biodiversity, but only if we get together and take action now. And without hope, we will fall into apathy and do nothing. Then we are doomed. Robert Frost once said, I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I say, take the road to saving this planet. Take an active role and walk down that road. No, run down that road. Make a vow to yourself today, and then make it happen. If you all just sit there on your phones, it's not going to get done. You are not going to have a planet that you want to live on. A planet choked by smoke, engulfed in plastic, nature silent, diminished, and disappeared. A world so hot it sizzles. A planet drowned by floods. Back to my dream. Noah, when he steered his ark into Port Jefferson to ask for refuge? What did we do? Extinct is such a final word. Such a final word. Like death, the last breath. Oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't, you say. But you didn't do anything. You twiddled on your phone. You played a game on your laptop. Pick up that phone and organize. There are millions of people that care about this planet. Organize with them. Those people who don't want to see the animals disappear. First the tigers, then the elephants, the rhinos, the panda and the gorillas, the whales, the dolphins, the turtles, the sharks, then the lemurs and the trees. We need to take action and rally others to get going to save this planet. There is resilience. There is hope that we can bring it back, like the California condor soaring over the Grand Canyon, like Przewalski's horses galloping across the Gobi Desert, like the lemurs leaping through the rainforest, like the oysters that colony cling in Oyster Bay. Please don't let nature disappear. Don't let Mother Earth down. Get up and take action. Nature is resilient, but it needs your help in its battle to survive. Have hope for the future, but be the future. During this Earthstock week, in honor of that first Earth Day and those millions of people throughout the world who vowed to make a difference, let's vow to start the movement of resilience at Stony Brook. Let's say that here, right here at Stony Brook University, we started a path that led to saving a planet. And let's keep communities in the recipe, and let's organize, and let's vote. Organize and help to get out the vote. As individuals, there are limits, but we need to work together to save this big planet. As Carl Safina said recently, times change, but the imperatives of human dignity and a life worth living and the needs of nature remain. Let's join together to work for the survival of this planet and all of its inhabitants. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I just want to say thank you so much for your talk this afternoon. I did have one question though. Do you happen to know where? I'm sure you heard of Clara's Woods. That's towards the south of our campus. Do you have any idea where that area got its name from?
Am I aware of what?
Where Clara's Woods got its name from?
No, I don't know where Clara's Woods got its name from. Please tell me.
Oh, Sharon?
Malcolm Bowman named it that after one of his students.
Okay, a little bit of Stony Brook lore.
That's fantastic. And Malcolm Bowman's not here today? Because he's the one that really started Stony Brook. And we really give him high praise. Not Stony Brook, but Earthstock at Stony Brook. And we give him high praise for his many years of organizing this very important event.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, thank you. This was very interesting.
How long of a climatological record does Madagascar have? Do you know?
How long
Of a climatological record?
climatological record? Yes, well, we've been looking at some isotopes in caves that go way back. But basically, they've been keeping records since, the French colonization.
Oh, okay.
But the records of climate that they've been keeping have always been in cities or near cities.
Right.
So what we've done is we've kept the weather, the rainfall, and the temperatures, and the wind, for the last 35, 40 years.
Good.
So we have 40 years
Terrific.
of right inside the rainforest data.
Terrific. Okay, thank you.
And it's really great because we also have been doing phenology, so we can keep track of the flowering and fruiting of the plants.
Right.
And of course, we've also been keeping track of reproduction in the lemurs and many other monitoring events that really make it extremely obvious that things have changed a lot in 40
You can make those
years.
associations confidently.
Yes.
Right. Great, thank you.
Hi, Pat. Thank you for a wonderful talk. I'm wondering if you could tell us the most surprising conservation success you've seen in Madagascar.
So the most surprising conservation success that we've seen. There's a lot of them that are surprising because you're not sure what's going to work and what's not going to work, to tell you the truth. And one of the things that really worked so well was the fact that we empowered some of the traditional healers and their wives to do projects that had to do with the rainforest. And I was quite surprised because the traditional healers, although they kept records of stories and what worked and what didn't work, it was the wives who created this very powerful business of making scarves out of silk, out of a natural silk from the rainforest. And they are making about, $25,000, $30,000 a year just doing scarves. Unfortunately, last week, the place that we had supplied them with looms and things, looms and materials way in the beginning, and then they took off and were very successful on their own, and their building burned to the ground. So now we have to start again by buying their looms again, because that's a big investment, and they'll take off after that because they're very good businesswomen. So that was a surprise for me because I thought that the traditional medicines would take off, and instead it was the scarves that took off. Another big surprise was when we had that fire inside the national park, because I saw everybody from the surrounding villages, from the Madagascar National Parks, of course, our research station. Everybody went out there and put out that fire with their bare hands and shovels. It was a big fire, and it was the first time it had ever entered into the park. And it's very hard because there's not necessarily, there's a big river that goes through the park, but to get the water from the river up to where it was burning was very difficult. So that was another thing that it was a surprise, and I was very happy to see the communities really believe in conservation.
Hi, thank you so much for that talk, and I was really tearing up. Oh, I'm supposed to get up, I'm told. I just wanted to ask you if you could say a couple of words about the QR code that you have up here for the saving, protecting research and wildlife.
Yes, this is right here. This is Clara's Woods that we just talked about. And I think it's very important that all of us that are here work together to save this woods that's right here on campus. And it's something that We think, well, Stony Brook, it's got a lot of woods, there's no problem. But there is a problem because we can lose that wood so easily. And the construction can be placed somewhere else. So I think we should put a little pressure on the administration to save Clara's woods.
Hi, how can faculty, staff, and students at Stony Brook participate in or support your work at Center ValBio?
Wow, I'd love it if you'd all come to Madagascar. Yes, there's so much going on in Madagascar that we at Stony Brook can get involved in. I mean, in ecology and evolution, of course, we don't just have lemurs. We have tenrecs, and we have frogs, and we have all kinds of wonderful animals to study. And now we have these incredible tools, including DNA and genetic resources, that we can actually find out a lot more about them. We're establishing a small museum, really. And I know you think museums are old-fashioned, but we can do it from scratch, where we can get the DNA, we can get videos of the animals alive, we can do so much more to make a museum a really living place and really understand so much more about the animals because of our technology. We're flash freezing insects, and we're flash freezing plants so that we can get the whole genomes of them. But I'm really interested in the behavior. So I really think I'm hoping that we'll have lots of students that will be able to go over and fill in so many of the blanks. There's so much that we don't know. And I mean, Madagascar is just so full of surprises. Like a year ago, my graduate student Florence was up looking for shafacas in the northern part of the park. She came back and she said, "There's caves up there." And I said, "No." And she said, yes, there is. I said, "I've been everywhere in that park." She said, "There's caves." And so I was sitting at the dining hall at the research station, and I said to my first graduate student, I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I've been in a cave." Then the second graduate student said, "I'm a spelunker." And the third graduate student said, "I do sedimentology." And then my husband said, "I got ropes." And they went up there the next day. I mean, they left at like dawn. I had to go to a meeting. They got up there, and they came back down, and they were totally exhausted. And I said, "Did you see anything? Did you find the caves?" They said, "Yes." I said, "What was in the caves?" And they told me about a mantis and a spider and a worm. And I said, "Were there any bones?" And they said, "Oh, yes." And I said, what was it? And they said, "Well, we think it was a pig because we have invasive red forest hogs from Africa." "Did you take a photo?" I said. And they said, "Yes." And I looked at that photo, and in one glance, I knew that wasn't a pig. It was a hippopotamus. A hippopotamus. How could that be true? In a pristine rainforest, this is uncut by anybody, pristine rainforest in Madagascar, in one of the steepest places in all of Madagascar. Okay, so then I thought, uh-oh, we're in trouble. I wrote immediately to Dominic Stratford, who taught my student Florence about the caves, and I said, "It's your fault. You better get over here and help us find out what's inside that cave." And then I wrote to Leakey Foundation, and I said, "You better give us some money." And they gave us some money, and Dominic came over. Make a long story short, we got the ancient DNA out of that fossil. We have molars, we have front limbs, hind limbs, and we're going back on June 1st to find some lemurs. I want to see extinct lemurs. Because 17 species of lemurs have gone extinct. All of them are bigger than the lemurs today. Some of them are big as gorillas, some are big as chimps. And the fact that we found a hippopotamus way up there, I mean, what is it doing in the rainforest? You know, it's hard to know. And how old is it? I know that's what you're going to ask. And the American Museum of Natural History told me that by the end of April, we will know the age of that hippopotamus. We know it was a young hippo, but we would like to know whether it's 100 years old or 500 years old or 1,000 years old. Most of the giant fauna that went extinct in Madagascar went extinct right after people arrived from Indonesia in about 2,000 years ago. And then the second wave of people came about 1,000 years ago, the Bantu from Africa. And the Malagasy people are a mixture of those two populations. Anyway, Madagascar is full of surprises. And that last frog I showed you a minute ago, that's a brand new species. 2 weeks ago, we finally got it published. And this is the Andy Sabin Foundation, Family Foundation, helped us to do this excavation and also expedition, and also do the DNA for the species. But we've got more in the pipeline, just want to tell you. We've been doing a lot of exploration, and we've been doing a lot of looking at the small fragments of forest around in Madagascar, in the wasteland and in the areas that are more lowland. And we're hoping that we can put corridors between them of forest so that we can eventually build back habitats. I think that's the only hope for the populations. The populations have dwindled down to very low, but we can build them back up. They have resilience. We have one down here. Oh, two back there.
All right, I'll go first. You mentioned Rachel Carson and DDT, and you said then DDT was banned. But you skipped an important step there, because after Rachel Carson wrote about DDT, half a dozen Long Islanders who were very concerned about how the ospreys were disappearing sued Suffolk County to stop the indiscriminate spraying of DDT. And when they surprised themselves by winning, they sued federally. And one of them was Charles Worster, who was a professor here at the Marine School at SOMAS, what is now called SOMAS. And so really, they started the modern environmental movement and decided to go on to create a group called the Environmental Defense Fund, which is still one of the biggest and most effective environmental groups. And Stony Brook University can make the claim that that started with one of the professors here, and just goes to show you what can happen when concerned people decide to do something and don't give up.
Thank you very much, Carl Safina. I really appreciate that. Yes, we can't forget Charlie Wooster and all the things that happened here at Stony Brook. Stony Brook has been an incubator for a lot of things, and I would like it to continue to be that way, because we're in trouble, this planet.
Hi, I'm a student who studies like the ocean and stuff like that. I was just wondering, like with the current climate, you know, we're seeing a lot of backtracking in like our conservation efforts. What would you recommend, or like, do you have any words of advice for students who are, you know, about to go out into this world where we're backtracking and dealing with, you know, issues that we thought we had solved? I don't know about anyone else here, but for me, it's pretty scary. But like, yeah, I just want to know if you have anything to say.
It is really scary. And I really feel sad, because we thought that we had accomplished so much, and now you have to go back and fight again for all those things that we thought we'd already accomplished. And I apologize for that, I guess. But I think that you please don't give up. I mean, it's so important. I mean, we're going to live on an unlivable planet if you give up. So please don't do that. And I think we have to. I really do think that here at Stony Brook we have to talk about how we can organize to continue saving this planet. So maybe after this we We can talk together, but please don't give up and become active. Help us, and all of us help each other, because you can't do it with one person or two people. You gotta organize together, and it takes a lot of effort. And you think, well, as I said, if you just fiddle with your phones, you don't get anywhere. But if we can work together, we can make some progress and get back to where we are and to get further ahead.
I had a question about if there was any rejection against the national park in Madagascar from the local people, and if there was any pushback, what was the argument like?
It's really interesting for me to think back at those first days, because of course they thought it was a crazy idea, it was a bad idea, and they didn't want to have any part of it. And it was like we would have village meetings where, we would talk about the protected area and they would talk about how they didn't want it there. I mean, it was really, and I would have been a little discouraged, but I couldn't be, because those lemurs really deserve to be protected. And I'm glad I didn't get discouraged, because what I realized then, that this discussion and constant discussion about how it's not going to be this and it's not going to be that, and what can we do, we can't do that, was a process. It was an incredible process that all conservation actually is, where you have to have a dialogue and there has to be a win-win on both sides, or it's not going to happen. And the win-win was, of course, tourism, so that's one way that everybody can help, is go over to Madagascar and actually see those animals, and the little money that you bring in is big bucks for them. And how did we convince them? I would say one project that worked at a time. Tourism has expanded the economy greatly, but working on other projects, such as the project with the vanilla, suddenly people say, oh, they can make money off of the forest. Then, oh my goodness, the jobs. There's so many more jobs there. We have 144 local people that we employ, but then the national park has all those people that we employ. We had one hotel at the beginning. Now we have, 36? And those are jobs in cooking and cleaning and handicrafts and music, and it just, it really changes. It changes the lifestyle of all the people. So now when you go around, I haven't heard anybody complaining lately, it's like a kind of very different than it used to be. That doesn't mean that somebody's not going to complain and that we will discuss and discuss again. But it's a continual discussion and dialogue. And if somebody says, this is not working, then you go talk to them and say, okay, what's not working? What can we do? Let's work on something together. And then education. I know we're in a university, and I believe very strongly in education, and that education works. And I think one of the reasons for that is the fact that when I went first to Madagascar and I hired the local people, they had 3 years of education, right? First, second, and third grade. They could barely read and write. They certainly couldn't speak English or French. Their children are going to college. Their children, well, at least 3 or 4 of them, are getting their PhDs. One generation of having a steady income so that you can pay for education, and being able to have that incentive if you do something like get your kids to go to university, they'll have good jobs when they get out. So, it can, at least in Madagascar, can work. But you it's never easy. Just want to tell you that. I make it sound easy sometimes, and it never is. Right now, we have, there's several problems. COVID, oh my God, COVID, just no tourism. So all of a sudden, all these people were without jobs. And of course, the whole world was suffering at that time. So everything isn't perfect. Now tourism is up, but then we had a little bit of a political problem and tourists didn't come back. So you have to be very, don't put all your eggs in one basket, I think is the saying. You have to have a diversity of solutions. As one works, and then it doesn't, you have to go to another one. So I think you have to, it's an interesting game of trying to diversify your funders. USAID, one day it disappeared. It provided 1/2 of the income for conservation and environmental programs. And one day in February, it was gone. We have an example of one of the people that lost their job because of that here in this room. It was like, how could that happen? So what do? So what do? I go someplace else for the money. So I've been working with Europeans on getting some European funds. There were Norwegians, the Danes, and I've done all I can to try to get private funders here in the U.S. to help us through this tough time. So being flexible, being resilient, and not giving up, and always having hope. I probably would have left Madagascar 100 times, but these people, we can't just leave the extraordinary Malagasy people to fend for themselves in a very difficult world. So any of you who have been to Madagascar know what I'm talking about there. Wonderful people.
I have a question about the lemurs, and I guess it's following on some other question, and that is it's very hard to create social change, and you mentioned that the lemurs were being used as for meat as part of the diet. I'm wondering how you convince the local communities that they shouldn't be doing that, or reverse, that
to
lemurs
stop
should
hunting.
be preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that took a while before that happened. But you have to replace that meat with something else, chickens or, beef and pigs. So you have to help with livestock and improving livestock. We're about to hire a vet. Finally, we're about to hire a vet that's going to help give shots out to vaccinations for the chickens and for the pigs and for the, it's a long haul. That's one thing. And of course, prohibiting them from going into the forest is somewhat of a deterrent. But, that's not the only deterrent. You have to provide other sources of protein for them. And that's what we've been trying to do.
Hi, Dr. Wright. Good to see you. I have a question. Now, it gets a little overwhelming getting involved environmentally, because I've been trying to do that on Long Island, just getting into groups like Pollinator Pathways and Rewild Suffolk County. And what would you say is a priority? So there's local activism, which you can actually have, just push the needle a little bit. And in terms of your international effort, what would you say the priority is getting involved there?
I think it's really important to do both. I'm for preserving Long Island as well as the rest of the world because they're all interconnected, But I think it's very important. The reason why I pointed out several political things is that, you know, voting in conservation-minded people like Stephen Engelbright or whoever is very important. And so please all vote, because it really makes a difference. I mean, especially young people, they say, oh, it doesn't make a difference. It does. It really does. So please do that. And also, there are many organizations like Rewild, like Rainforest Trust, many organizations that you can work with or send funding to. Even a little bit of funding will always help. I think I just got a call from Earthwatch, and Earthwatch is an incredible program where anybody, like all of you, can come and help and do a research and conservation program. And so you pay for going for 2 weeks with like our project, and then that helps us because we get some funds from that. And it helps you because you understand a lot more of the complexities of doing conservation. And so they just said that they wanted to come to Ranamafan and work with us with our Shafaka program. So that's also a way that you can do it. Being an ecotourist, the proper ecotourism, but if you're going to Madagascar, we don't have like really big companies that come. So we have pretty conservation-minded companies. So anytime you're going to come, you'll probably be in a good organization. But it's because so much depends. Wildlife is one of their #1 economic drivers in ecotourism. Seeing wildlife, not eating it, but seeing it. Okay, well, thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. And this is the kickoff of the whole week, so I'm hoping that you'll participate in all the events that we have in the next week, and especially on Friday. I love Friday when everybody has their booth out. Let's hope for a sunny day and not quite so cold. So thank you again.